So this morning what I want to do, if you were to ask me, do you have any advice for me for 2026? You've been a Christian for 50 years. Look at my face, long time. Been a pastor for 40 years. What are some of the things that you'd give me advice for? So I've got 3 words. The title of this message is 3 words of, you can start the clock now. There you go. 3 words of advice for 2026. Of course, there's more things I could say, but I think these three things affect my life. And the recommendations, and I think will help you have a successful 2026. We're going to look at 2 passages. The first is from the book of Lamentations, and the second one is from Matthew 18. The book of Lamentations was written by the prophet Jeremiah, we're pretty sure, after the Babylonians had come, conquered Judea, and just leveled Jerusalem. Flattened the temple, took everything of value out of the temple, out of the palaces, out of the city. Any person that had any kind of education or value, they took them back to Babylonia and, to use them and their skills. And now Jeremiah is looking at all this ruin. And he's asking, what's going to happen? Judaism is dead. We can't sacrifice. What now, Lord? What future do we have? And then starting in chapter 3, which we're going to pick up on, is he begins to remember something. He begins to remember who God is and his character. And so that's what we're going to pick up here. Lamentations 3, starting in verse 20. Surely my soul remembers. He's starting to remember about who God is. And is bowed down within me. This I recall to my mind, and therefore I now have hope. The Lord's loving kindness indeed never cease. His compassion never fails. They are new every morning, great is thy faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I have hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the person who seeks him. So I'm going to give you my first 2 words of advice for 2026 out of that passage. The first one, number 1, is each day is a new start. Verse 22 and 23. As we start into a new year, there's always excitement about a new year because of the possibilities and potentials that a new year brings. What has impacted my life for decades now is that you can have that same excitement that you have over a new year every single morning. Because what's important to God is not what happened yesterday. What's important to God is the obedience and the potential of today. God doesn't look at the failures of yesterday. You and I look at them, but he doesn't. If the Bible tells us anything, through numerous biblical characters, through numerous passages, is yesterday's failures, disappointments, sin, betrayal, lies, loss, what other people have done for you is not the last word. Why? Because today is a new day. And it's announced every day by God by a sunrise. Every day is a new day to get it right. Every day is a new day of new possibilities and potential, and God pouring out his Spirit upon you, and for you to experience being a winner, not a loser. I love this time of year because I get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, not because I'm greatly disciplined, simply because my body says, okay, time to get up. It's all stiff, and when you're old, you'll understand, if you are. And so I get up. And I love this time of year because I get up and I sit with my cup of coffee and read my devotions and I watch the sunrise. In my house, the sunrise is announced. It is announced by God. We built our own house years ago, and our living room faces east, the mountains. We're up on a hill. I got windows that start from 2 foot off the ground all the way to the ceiling, all across one side, and then over on the right side. So when the sunrise comes, I mean, it is announced. And sometimes it's so beautiful. No two sunrises are the same. My phone is filled with pictures of God's glory. And sometimes the sunrise is announced with, dramatic fashion. We have to shut the curtains. It's so bright. This ball of fire is coming in the room, right? I mean, literally blinding us. But I'm sitting there drinking my coffee, and even when the ball of fire is coming and there's no clouds in the sky, it reminds me that God is announcing a new day. And I can't help but think, what does God have for me today? What is God going to bring into my life today? What are the possibilities to serve Him? What are the great things that are going to happen today that God has designed for me? Look, guys, I'm not saying that there's not consequences for yesterday. What I am saying is yesterday's sins, failures, betrayals, loss, those things, the new day's coming, those past failures do not hinder God's anointing on your life for this day. They do not hinder God's potential on your life this day. They do not hinder God's blessings and possibilities and miracles on your life today. I thought that was pretty good. You guys should, yay! Because you know what? It's true. It's true. And this has changed my life. You don't have to wallow in the past. Every day the sun comes up, it's a new day to live for Jesus. And God is only concerned about your obedience and the possibilities of today. That's pretty good. Thank you. Some of you get it. Anyway. Jesus made it very clear in Matthew chapter 6. If we take one day at a time, if we look to Jesus in that day, Jesus will help us, give us what we need for that day. And Paul says, as God meets our need for that day, He's going to do beyond what we ask and think. Ephesians 3:20. I don't think, I think, I don't want to say something that's not true, but just about every single day, I repeat Psalm 118:24. This is the day the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. And at my house, it's announced, this is the day the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. When I drive down the hill, it's just one of the things. It's a habit. This is the day the Lord has made. I'll rejoice and be glad in it. Can you understand that if you have that attitude, it'll change the way you live that day? It's really affected my life. And that's my word of advice, my first one. Each day is full of potential. Yesterday is forgotten by God. You're the one who remembers yesterday. Other people may remember, but God doesn't. He's only considered in your obedience and the possibilities and potential of that day. It's a fantastic thing. Okay, that's the first word. And I'm not excited at all. Okay. Second word of advice from Lamentations is this, that God is faithful. Wait on Him. Now, faithfulness is a characteristic, I believe, that can best be understood by the words that describe it. You want to put those up, please? Dependable, reliable, trustworthy, steadfast, true, loyal, committed, consistent, unfailing, unwavering. And when I mentioned this to my wife, she said, "That's you." No, bad joke. Bad joke. I didn't do that to other services. I don't know. I drank some coffee and because I was feeling a little tired. And I looked at my wife and I said, I might be in trouble. Anyway, these are the words that describe God. Dependable, reliable, trustworthy, steadfast, true, loyal, committed, consistent, unfailing, unwavering. This concept of faithfulness has to do with dependability. And God is totally dependable. You can totally depend on Him to fulfill His promises to you. Deuteronomy 7:9. Know therefore that the Lord, He is God, the faithful God who keeps His covenant and His loving kindness to a thousandth generation with those who love Him and keep His commandments. Joshua. Not one of the good promises which the Lord has made to the house of Israel failed. All came to pass. 2 Timothy 2:13. If we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. 2 Corinthians 1:20. And I love this verse. For as many as are the promises of God, in him they are yes. Now the prophet Habakkuk, chapter 2, he says, the person who pleases God, the righteous person, is a person who lives by faith. In other words, trusts in God's faithfulness, bases their life on God's faithfulness, believes if God said it, I believe it, and I'm going to do my best to live that way. I'm going to live in confidence that God will fulfill his promises. Now, the thing about God's promises are, so often, they're just, the fulfillment of these promises come about slowly. And so we end up waiting. And I think you can tell right now, I'm a hyper dude. Waiting is hard for me. I don't know how my parents dealt with me when I was 5 or 6 years old. And waiting is not easy. Did you know, guys, I found out there's such a thing as an impatience tolerance index. Look it up. Impatient tolerance index, because we Americans are very impatient. I mean, I open the door at Mission Fed, and there's 4 or 5 people there, and my first reaction is, oh, I gotta wait 3 minutes. If you are in a situation right now that you're claiming a promise of God and you're waiting on him, I'm telling you, God will fulfill that promise in your life. And I just want to give you, when you're in a season of waiting, delight yourself in the Lord. He will give you the desires of your heart. And there's something that you're praying about and whatever. Whatever that you promise that you're waiting for, whatever relief you're waiting from God, whatever miracle you're waiting for God, while you're waiting, remember these 4 words. And I'm sure you've heard it before. I'm not bringing it to you just because they'd be good on a bumper sticker, okay? God is never late. God is never late. Say that with me. God is never late. God is God. Duh. And he knows the best timing. I got saved when I was 22 years old. And I wanted to get married. You know, I had my first girlfriend while I was in kindergarten. I never believed in, which, that's a long story. I don't want to get into that. I never believed in cooties or any of that stuff. I just know these girls are cool, man. So, and I didn't get married till I was 35. I got saved 22. I didn't get married till I was 35. But here's the point. God's never late. I got married. Been married almost 40 years. I've got I got kids who are growing up. They love Jesus. I got grandkids. What I'm saying is God is faithful. Not on my timetable, but God's never late. I joke with people. I had to wait for my wife to grow up. You can laugh all you want, but it's the truth. Sometimes I think, when I was graduating from high school, and a 6-year-old girl would have come running across, and someone would have said, "That's your wife." What? But anyway, I mean, it was God. God got us together. She was the right person for me, and we've been married for almost 40 years. And we graduated, okay. I graduated from seminary at 29 years old. I'd gone through college went the 5th year, got my teaching credential. I only taught for 2 years. That's another story. Then God called me to go to the Lutheran Seminary in Dubuque, Iowa. And that's 4 years. Long story short, I finally graduate from seminary at 29 years old. And I'm ready to start my life. And I know I've shared with you before, the Lord made me sit at my aunt's house for 2 years before I was able to start a church, do what I know that God had called me to do. But it was perfect. I look back now and I see that Mark was a little behind me in schooling because he had a wife and kids. And so there's things that had to happen with Mark's life and in my life. One of the things was, no, I don't want to get into that. No. So, because the clock's ticking. We start the church. And Mark and I had to wait years. We started meeting in Cleveland Elementary and then San Carlos Rec Center. And we knew we needed a place, a permanent place where we could have a church. And when I say we didn't want to have a church in El Cajon, it's an understatement. We grew up in La Mesa. Do you know, El Cajon's the pit. I don't want to have a church down there. I'm telling you, Mark and I did not want to have a church down here. But through a series of events, God worked in our life, and this is the perfect place. Has been the perfect place. Every time our church got a little bigger, a section of this industrial space opened up just miraculously. Oh, we'll take that. And then we took more and more and more until here we are. I had to wait for years for my son to overcome dyslexia. Sorry, I get a little emotional. It was hard on him. The devil kept telling him he was stupid. Wasn't stupid, very intelligent as a matter of fact. He just, when you have dyslexia very badly, your eyes see things. It messes them up. But now my son reads these big, thick historical books and always trying to get me to read them. And I look at him and go, I want to read a book 500 pages on the Civil War. No, thank you. But God did it. Each of these situations, and if we had a microphone right now, we could spend the next 5 hours listening to Christians, older Christians, give testimony about how God is never late. In each of these situations, in my life and your life, many of your lives, God is working, you just can't see it. Young person, God is working in your life, you just can't see it. Trust in Him. You'll never be disappointed. Isaiah 64:4 says this, "For from days of old they have not heard nor perceived by ear, nor has the eye seen a God like you, who acts on behalf of the one who waits for Him." When I read that, this is what it says to me. The Lord acts while we wait. Sometimes one of the most powerful things you can do is nothing. Get on your knees and just say, Lord, I give it to you. You promised me. I'm not going to muddy the waters here. I'm not going to react to this situation. I just want to wreck 2026 here. When a situation comes into your life that's really big, a task, a lack, whatever it is, don't react to that situation. The Bible says, he who makes haste with his feet errs. Proverbs 19:2. That's one of my life verses. I was going to put it on my desk. Sometimes I think, well, no, I don't want to go there either. But anyway, there's a reason why that's a life verse. Because I'm the kind of guy that goes, yeah, and I jump, and there's nothing there, there's just air, and I'm falling to the canyon. Do not panic. This year, do not panic. Panic is the playground of Satan. Do you remember? It's just panicking, making decisions when you're panicked is the playground of Satan. It opens up a Pandora's box for the enemy. Take a deep breath, trust in God, fulfill your obligations, be diligent, be responsible, get counsel, pray, and wait for God. Psalms 37. The steps of a man, and obviously a woman, are established by the Lord. Now that word established in the Hebrew means prearranged. Step by step, prearranged. If you're a Christian, God is in your life. He's got you by the hand, which we'll see here, and he's walking you down a road. He delights in his way. The steps of a man are established by the Lord. He delights in his way. When he falls, he will not be hurled headlong, because the Lord is the one who will hold his hand. I have been young, and now I am old. That's me. Yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken, or his descendants begging bread. Years ago, I put out a challenge, and it went on the internet, and it was very, oh my gosh. I said to young people, go and find me somebody who's lived for God, who's 60, 70, 80 years old. Sure, they've had, they're not perfect, they've had problems, but has seriously tried to live for Jesus their whole life, who would tell you, young person, don't do it. You're not going to find. Those people do not exist, because God's faithful. Now, when that challenge went out on the internet, I got emails from all these angry people. They were mad because, you read these, and these angry people because God didn't do what they wanted, right? I mean, that's basically what it came down to. They didn't wait long enough to see God's miracle, which is better than what they wanted. Young person especially, if you want to have a successful life, if you want to look back on your life and just throw up your hands and say, thank you, Jesus, wait on God. Trust in his promises. Take one day at a time, trust his promises, and wait on God. I gotta go to the third one. Third word of advice. Now, this is going to come from Matthew 18. Forgive. Forgive. And then ultimately ask others to forgive you. But forgive. There's very few words that have the power of forgive. 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 That word has supernatural power. It changes lives, changes relationships, heals sick people. Say forgive with me. Forgive. You're going to have a hard time experiencing the abundant life that God has for you if you hold on to unforgiveness. And I'll tell you why in a second. Some of you have been hurt or wronged by another person. A spouse's unfaithfulness, ungodly parents. Maybe you've been victimized at some point in your life by someone, slandered, humiliated by a superior, taken advantage of, betrayed by a friend, ignored by your adult children, cheated by a business partner. We could go on and on. Jesus says, forgive. Thing about unforgiveness is, some of you have unforgiveness in your heart right now, and just because we're talking about it, a name's popped into your mind. And that name brings up anger and bitterness. It brings up the hurt all over again. After service, I had a girl come out just fall on her knees and just start crying. In Matthew 18, and if you've been a Christian for any length of time, you've read this before. But Peter comes up to Jesus and he says this. Peter came up to Jesus and said, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? Now, I think it's the Talmud at that time said that you had an obligation before God to forgive somebody 3 times. But after that, you have to forgive him anymore. So Peter's thinking, wow, I'm a magnanimous person. Jesus, he was, thought he'd get that Jesus would commend him. But no, this is what Jesus says. Jesus said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. 490 times. It must have blown Peter away. Because Peter wasn't stupid. He knew what Jesus was saying. Unlimited. You just forgive. What does Paul say? Ephesians 4:32. Be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, just as God in Christ has forgiven you. Colossians 3:13. Bearing with one another and forgiving each other, whoever has a complaint against anyone, just as the Lord forgave you, so also should you. Paul reminds us right here, just as the Lord forgave you, so also should you. Forgiveness is received through Jesus, and then that same forgiveness that Jesus has given us, we give to other people. It really is that simple. Let me rephrase that. It's theologically simple, but practically in doing it can be very difficult because some people have really hurt us. What exactly am I talking about here? What exactly is Jesus talking about when someone has hurt you? What are you supposed to do? Well, first of all, you cease. If you're really trying to forgive somebody, you stop blaming them for your present condition. No. You cease blaming. You stop feeling resentment against another person. You grant that person a pardon. They don't owe you anything anymore. Now, really forgiving someone is not making light of what they have done for you. It is making a decision as a Christian. I'm going to forgive this person because I don't want what they've done to me to affect me anymore. I don't want to experience this anger and unforgiveness and bitterness anymore. It's affecting my life. It's affecting every relationship I have. I can't seem to move on. This is my definition of forgiveness, and I hope it helps you. Forgiveness is letting go of my perceived right to hurt you for hurting me. When someone sins against us, we want them to feel some kind of retribution. We want them to feel the same pain that we felt. Forgiveness is saying, that's God's problem. I forgive. Now, is forgiveness easy? Oh, no. Because it's otherworldly. At the Charlie Kirk funeral, Erica Kirk was, what a testimony for Christianity. But anyway, our president, one after another, they talked about faith and love, and our president gets up, and he said, I can't forgive people. Remember? And I thought, oh my God. So I've been praying for him in this one particular thing. That man holds grudges. That man has unforgiveness in his heart. And I love my president. I want him to feel free. Forgiveness is freedom. Say it with me. Forgiveness is freedom. I just understand, I'm not putting down our president because there's been many times it's been very difficult for me. I've had people that I've mentored, and loved and spent time with stabbed me in the back, tried to make my life miserable, betrayed me. Forgiveness means freedom. And until I forgave them, and forgiveness, a lot of times, first it's a choice, and then it's a process. So this person has wronged me. I say, Lord, I forgive you. And maybe it means you have to go to, however the Lord leads you, but you have to forgive him or her, him or her. And then if it's a deep wound, it's not long before that wound is surfaced again, you have to forgive. You have to forgive. You have to forgive. And sometimes it takes a while. You say, I forgive you, and the next hour you may say, I forgive you again. And then it's every other day, and every third day. And then, and pretty soon, you really have forgiven them. They're not in your thoughts all the time. You're not thinking about them anymore. Things don't set you off. Things don't remind you of things. You're not reacting to people and situations based upon what that other person did to you. That's freedom. And Jesus wants you to experience that freedom. Now, in Matthew 18, we just read, he has that encounter with Peter and tells him he's supposed to forgive people 490 times. In other words, unlimited. And then he tells a parable, which we don't have time to go into. And at the end of the parable, Jesus tells all his listeners, that if you hold on to unforgiveness, if you will not forgive someone, you are going to be handed over to torturers. Read it yourself, verse 34. If you do not forgive, you'll be handed over to torturers. Jesus said, if you do not give what is owed, in other words, forgive, you're going to be handed over to torturers. First time I read that, I said, what in the world are you talking about, Lord? It's obviously some kind of demonic thing. When we hold on to sin, when we practice sin, because unforgiveness is sin, we open our lives to Satan. And all Satan has to do is poke that unforgiveness. And now you're angry, it affects your life. But I also think those tortures are some other things, physical consequences. Consequences with relationships. Studies have shown that unforgiveness and anger is related to drug abuse. Unforgiveness to someone is related to drug abuse, alcoholism, marital conflicts, inability to trust, the inability to love, sexual issues, and so on. Unforgiveness. I was reading, I went on the John Hopkins website. And I wanted to know, being angry and having unforgiveness heart. What does the secular world think about it? Holy cow! They're onto it. There's all kinds of diseases that they believe are related to unforgiveness. High blood pressure, immune response, heart disease, diabetes, stomach maladies, anxiety. Who knows about different kinds of cancers? Who knows? I believe this is part of what Jesus says is you'll be handed over to the torturers until you give what is owed. And what is owed to God is to forgive that person. And then God will release you from all this stuff. Forgiveness is freedom. I've talked about a lot of things. I always have one thing that I hope you never forget and that you walk away, that you understand. Forgiveness is freedom. Don't let the enemy, don't let that person who sinned against you control your life anymore. Forgive. Let me have the worship team out here. And folks, there's been a couple people in my life it's very hard to forgive. The slander. A letter going out to every person in the church. They got a hold of our mailing list, sent a letter to every person in church how horrible Mark and I, just lied about us. It was horrible. A person that I had spent hours and years with on a weekly basis. So I know how hard it is to forgive. But I didn't get free of that whole situation until I forgave him. Completely, absolutely, 100% forgave him. And it took some work, but here's the point. You'll get there. Pastor, you don't understand. Oh, yes, I do. Forgiveness is freedom. So there's the advice I have for you. Some of it, I suppose, for 2026, to experience a great year. Remember, every single day is a new day with Jesus. Old things, they're forgotten. As far as your Lord is concerned, the anointing and possibilities and potential of that day are new every morning. Secondly, God is faithful. Trust in him. Base your life on his word. Try to be obedient. What God is interested in you for you today is your obedience and the possibilities and potential that exist because you're trying to follow him that day. God is faithful, so wait on him. And then forgive. Let's all stand.